Hey everybody, Tony D and little Joan here with a Screenwriter's Rant, and this might be a little long. Uh, this one is about the just announced Indiana Jones movie. I know. First, let me say that I got some of my information from Yellow Flash, and if you haven't seen Yellow Flash's videos, they're really good. Check his take out on. And basically, he talks same thing about Bounding in the comics talks about is the new Indiana Jones movie will be woke with the announcement of Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's probably going to be the next Indiana Jones character. Like she's gonna carry the torch, as it were, because apparently things didn't work out with Shia LaBeouf too well, unfortunately. This is a huge problem in Hollywood with the franchises, and a lot of reason why they've stayed away from them for so long. In the past, not now, but in the far off past, no way, man, no franchises, because this was the problem. What if you do a passing of the torch and it kills it, right? So they did an Indiana Jones movie they thought everybody would love, and nobody liked it, really. I mean, people kind of liked it, but they kind of hated it. It's part of the problem with anything that's kind of long in the tooth. Long in the tooth, little tooth. I'm going to put you down because you're too squirmy. Eventually, people want to see you wreck it. Unless you're really on the cutting edge, which Indiana Jones, even in the final installments, started to get a little. I mean, it was okay, but quit while you're ahead. Get out of it while it's still good. But various elements in Hollywood just won't allow these egomaniacs to do that. And it's also about money, too. They see money here. Can they make money on the movie? Yeah, sure. I mean, it's Disney. They could pretty much take a dried turd and market it. They're really that good at marketing. But, and I was thinking of this yesterday, I think what has happened is marketing has overwhelmed the entire studio process to the point at which marketing now influences everything to an nth degree. Now, I'm not saying that marketing shouldn't have some influence. I mean, obviously, if there's a chance you could put a toy in or something to help the movie out, great, I guess, if it's creatively sound. But there has to be that buffer with the creatives to say, no, that's going to mess everything up. And you just don't have that anymore, in my view. When there's money to be made, especially in this economy, they're desperate. I feel that the entire studio industry is desperate for a hit, desperate to get back all those big profits, which they're not getting. They're failing to see the real problem. The real problem is, number one, everything's closed. And that's partly on them, because these studios also run the very media companies that help propagate the nonsense that closed everything down and continues to close everything down and caused riots and helped spur them on. So they have no one to blame but their other wings of their entertainment leviathans, let's call them. Now, the other elements include just the fact that they are massively big things, right? They're not as big as, say, the U.S. government, but they're big enough in that when the head of a studio makes a pronouncement, it could take months, years, before that trickles all the way down to, the projects that are actually being produced, because they do stuff so far ahead of time. And that's why you kind of see, some not woke stuff, I think, still eking out. There were rumors that Disney was abandoning wokeness, and I think that was a premature, looking back on it, and I said that too because it looked that way. I think maybe that was a premature call based on certain things just eking out of the system. Now, some of it's just going to fall through the cracks. But ultimately, these people are determined to make you woke. And they are convinced they are right, everyone else is wrong. Um, so, you know, part of it, I believe, is being driven by China. Because, again, they're Marxist, and this is cultural Marxism, right? This is, we can't beat them militarily, we can't beat them economically, but we can destroy their culture. So Indiana Jones is an icon, right? He's a hero to many young men who watch the movies and say, "Oh, he was a hero to me," because when I went to college, I took an archaeology minor because I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to be like Indiana Jones. This will be fun." I wouldn't have done that if those movies hadn't come out. It started my love of history and archaeology. You know, not that I was going to be Indiana Jones, but you get what I'm saying. By poisoning the well and poisoning it, you do the opposite, right? You say to young men, yeah, you're a bad person if you're like Indiana Jones. I know in my heart what's going to happen is there's going to be a scene in which Indy either has to explain why he stole from another culture or how he's being not prosecuted, but lambasted in the press for his, absconding with all these precious things. Whereas back in the 80s, when these movies came up, it was just a fun, stupid movie. I mean, nobody looked at it as anything other than a fun movie that took place at a period of time when a guy like this could possibly exist, maybe. And Indiana Jones was a bit of an amalgamation of a few characters from the previous golden era of movies. Not that the 80s were, but say like the 50s. In fact, there's a still of Ronald Reagan in one of his movies, and he's dressed very similar to Indiana Jones. But now they're bringing in this woman, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who's super woke apparently. She did the voice. If you saw the movie Solo, which I did because someone dragged me to it, and I thought it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. But the worst, hands down, the worst part of the movie was a robot, a feminist robot, a feminist droid, who they implied that, what's her name? Donald Glover's character had sex with. What the heck is Han Solo and Lando Calrissian. They implied that Lando had some sort of relationship with the droid. And it was awful. I mean, it just was an awful movie in my view. And now they've taken her, and she was also brought on to make and this is where I got from the Yellow Flash. I didn't realize this was the same woman, to make James Bond more modern. James Bond, I've always said, should have been left in the Cold War era. We would have avoided this. We would have avoided a lot of things. Studios have been afraid since the 90s to really call any culture out in the movie. Whereas it wasn't really an issue back in the Cold War. Oh, the Soviets, they're the bad guys. Anybody aligned with the Soviet, bad guy. But when politics got more complicated, rather than making the movie more complicated, they're so paranoid of being attacked by a special interest group that will say, "Oh, you made Iranians look bad." They would rather just avoid it altogether. Now, in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't that big a deal. It was just more like, let's avoid that. Now we have a situation in which anything that is remotely not woke gets blasted on the internet. Just gets unbelievably blasted. And rather than stand up to these idiots on Twitter or ignoring them, their own media companies magnify people's ridiculous comments, ridiculously woke comments, I'll add. So this is the absolutely wrong way to go, right? This is going to infuriate all the fans because it's mostly guys. Yeah, do women go see Indiana Jones? Sure. In case you've lived on planet Mars, let me explain to you how movies work. Young men take women to the movies, typically scary movies or thrilling movies, in order to sort of get the heart rate up and, have the girl, like, hold on to you during the scary moments. That's a date. It's called a date, woke tards. That's a date. You may not be familiar with it. And while you're, like, trying to negotiate, I guess, online with whatever girl on OnlyFans you simp for, normal people are going to movies and they want to be thrilled, or they want to be scared, or they want to laugh, or they want to have some emotion. They don't want to see a movie in which their main character is like, "Oh, you're an imperialist, Dr. Jones. You stole that you stole that golden idol from those natives. You need to return it." Nobody wants to see that. What they want to see is Indiana Jones stealing a golden idol from a bunch of natives who are shooting arrows at him, and he has to do some maneuver to get away. I mean, that's what we saw in the first movie. It was fun. Another thing, woke tards, I'll have to explain to you at another time. I don't want to make the video too long. So this is just going to be awful. I'm sure that I've already said that the James Bond movie is going to be awful. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't even waste my time. Not a second of my time would I waste. As far as I'm concerned, the James Bonds have been awful. All the ones with Daniel Craig, except for Casino Royale. That one was good. I like that one. All the other ones, Quantum of Solace, hands down the worst movie ever. But got the new one coming out, so maybe there's a new contender. The rest of them, I'm done. I'm done with Bond. We got the old ones. They're classics. What we need are new heroes. And what we need is, it's not even Phoebe Waller-Bridge's fault. She is just doing what's best for her career. The fact that she's woke, that just happens to play in her favor, and she just happens to be the flavor of the month. So they're putting her front and center. They're giving her all this attention. They're calling her a genius, and they will for a time until they realize they've lost millions and millions of dollars, and then they will quietly just forget her name. Remember Shia LaBeouf? But you can't make a character like Indy woke. He's not woke. First off, he's from the early 1900s, around during the time of World War II and before. So the character's very old. It's very old school. Excuse me. You can't expect audiences to see a guy like him and go, "Oh, he's very woke and wonderful." He's also Harrison Ford, who's now, gosh, is he in his 80s? I mean, the guy's in great shape. Don't get me wrong. He's always kept fit. He's an actor. He's handsome, but he's just too old at this point. No one wants to see craggy old Indiana Jones. And look, the continuity of Indiana Jones has fallen to pieces and will fall to pieces. What should happen is they should bring back Shia LaBeouf and make that character work. If they brought him back for a second time, they might be able to make him work, finally. But that's not what happens in movies. That's what happens in books. If you were the author and you wrote 4 Indiana Jones books and then you were going to write this 5th one, you wouldn't give up on Mutt. That was his name, right? Mutt, I think. You wouldn't give up on him. You'd make him. You'd say, well, that book didn't. The fans didn't really like it, but I'll rework him a little bit. And you'd rework him. You'd make him work. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Hollywood's not known for taking the hard road to do the creative steps necessary. What they're known for is making money. Make us money. What's money? Where's the money? Indiana Jones? Yeah, that's money. Yeah, that's money. What else is money? Woke. Oh, yeah. Make them woke. Make them woke so everybody loves them. Yeah. Yeah, that'll make us money. That's basically a short version of their meetings, I think. And you also have people like Kathleen Kennedy in the mix, right? So I think she's more feminist than woke, but man, she is definitely determined to double down on this nonsense, I feel. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I don't know her. This is all my speculation and opinion. But that seems to be the way things are going. That seems to be the scuttlebutt if you follow people like Baron von Doomcock and Yellow Flash who report on this stuff. So, it used to be that studios were hyper-focused on money, and that was it. And because movies came out of plays and television and, all that stuff, they tended to follow the rules that have been followed for literally hundreds of years with plays, which is you need romance. You need traditional relationships. You need thrills, chills, etc. Instead, because the left is trying to drag everybody into this cultural revolution, it's all about deconstructing that. They actually think by taking Indiana Jones and breaking him to pieces on screen and then letting people howl about it is a good thing. Right? That's a good thing to them. Because that's going to bring about more cultural revolution, which is what they ultimately want. Most of these people, I don't even think, want to make movies. I think they actually hate the movies and to some extent themselves. If they loved movies, they would love what went before, and they would carry on those traditions. There's still a few guys like that, but most of them, I think, have been driven out of the business. I've read an amazing article, which you have to read, and I'll link it. It's called The Suicide of Liberals, and James Lindsay, I put it on my Twitter. James Lindsay had put it on his Twitter, and let me tell you something. I was just blown away by reading this historical slice of pre-Soviet Russia. And this is prior to the revolution, how people were acting and thinking at that time. And it describes our culture to a T. It's exactly what's happening. It's exactly what's happening in the movie industry, in politics, everywhere. You have the suicide of the liberals. You have liberals, and keep in mind, everybody in Hollywood just about is a liberal. They are actively financing and encouraging their own demise. Let me say that again. They're actively encouraging and funding their own demise. Their actual demise. I don't mean the demise of movies. I don't mean their career. I mean their actual death. Because this cultural stuff leads to darker things. And they do not see it. Just as people in that pre-Soviet era did not see it. They didn't see it until literally they were being lined up and taken out. So these people think they're part of a revolution that's going to bring about utopia. And then I forget who was saying it. Someone talked about how, I guess it was the Lotus Eaters, talked about how Mao and somebody else said, it doesn't matter if 10 million or 100 million people die, as long as there's a chance at this utopia that the revolution will bring. So that's the thought process behind a lot of the more radical leftists. It doesn't matter. You're going to destroy Hollywood. Doesn't matter. You might destroy the United States. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. All that matters is that someday we might get to this amazing utopia where all our problems are solved. Which, of course, is ridiculous. You'll never get there. That's an illusion. Movies are supposed to be the illusion. But these revolutionaries think, they can fix all the world's problems. And they're going to do so by deconstructing Indiana Jones, just as they're deconstructing Bond, just as they're going to replace them with women and people of color and anybody who's from a, quote, marginalized group, to show you that it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Everybody's the same. Everybody's equal. Everybody does just the same stuff. And the results don't matter. And that's really the problem. Back in the day when something destroyed a movie studio or a movie did poorly, the studio would react and start firing people. Or they'd say, well, we're never doing that again. Look at Star Wars. Look at the absolute train wreck the new Star Wars movies, in my opinion, are. Look at what they're doing. They're still doubling down on it. They're still trying to push it. They're pushing the High Republic, which is even more woke and insane, in my view, if you've read anything about it. They're going to do the same thing to Indy, the same thing to James Bond, the same thing to every major iconic figure. Because it's not about making good movies. It's about deconstructing everything cultural. So the people who stand amongst the wreckage can say, now we can begin and have utopia. But what they don't understand is that's when they push you up against the wall. And that utopias don't exist. I think they've been sold a bill of goods by the Chinese and their various minions in the United States, because they literally have billions of people. It's not much for them to have millions of agents in the United States, and I think that's where we are. I think they are heavily involved in Hollywood, and they don't have to do much, really. Now, just bribe a few key people. It's not illegal to bribe Hollywood guys, right? I mean, you're going to bribe an actor, just give him some money. It's not illegal. So it's going to be easy to destroy Hollywood. And this is one little way it will. I'm sure Phoebe Waller-Bridge thinks she's doing something feminist and woke, and you know, most people have an ego when they go into something like this. Well, I'll make it great. I'll be the new Indiana Jones and everybody will love me. Nah. We could see where this is going. This is a train off a cliff right into an empty gorge. And it's just going to be interesting to see if Phoebe here, who's, you know, I mean, she was in Solo, I guess, or part of Solo. I mean, that to me was an awful movie. And yet, you know, good. She's an actress and a writer and a producer, and she produced her own TV series. But it's not the same. It's not the same. But Hollywood's also obsessed with bringing in women to show how woke they are, regardless of their ideas. Charlie's Angels, anyone? So this has got, I mean, look, Charlie's Angels, the first reboot, you know, did okay. That was mostly Drew Barrymore, is my understanding. She had a good idea. Bring back Charlie's Angels and we'll make them action stars. Well, seemed to work the first time. But this is just, it's just terrible. I don't know if they're trying to just destroy Disney and the movie industry in general. Maybe China has their own movie industry waiting in the wings to sort of step into the hole, the crater that these people leave. Or maybe they'll just re-edit the movie so it won't be woke, annoyingly woke for the Chinese audience. But then again, that would keep giving them money, so probably not. Probably not. Yeah, this is going to be really, really bad. It really just shouldn't happen at all. You know, if you were going to do an Indiana Jones movie, I mean, the best thing you could do is hit the reset button and give it off to somebody else and start with a young Indy. Not, you know, you could do a sequel, right? You could, but you'd have to get Shia LaBeouf. And they're not willing to take that risk again. And taking a risk on a younger guy, well, you saw how that worked in Solo. Yeah, not so good. Not so good. Mostly because of the script, though, I think. And again, the wokeness, which, again, Phoebe Waller-Bridge seemed to be involved in. So, good luck, Indy. I guess you can't get out of everything